All right. Welcome, everyone, to the first panel of the day. My name is Sky. I am working in the DAO space. I spent a lot of time with DXDAO, but also in the Metacartel ecosystem and DAO House and that those a bunch of projects. I proposed this panel to Felipe as an educational panel because the title of the DAOist is Tales from the Front Lines of decentralized governance, and in that space, we have all these different versions and forms of DAOs, right? And DAOs are really just communities, but when we think about decentralized DAOs and why it's important, there's characteristics of those. And so this, in my mind, we'll go through and just introduce ourselves really quickly. In my mind, the people up here and the projects we work with are on the more decentralized spectrum of DAOs. And with that, you basically face a lot of challenges, and you also learn things, and there's things that you have to overcome, and a lot of projects which start maybe not as decentralized and are moving towards decentralization with progressive decentralization. You're going to encounter a lot of these challenges, and so I figured it would be good to raise these topics and then also discuss them and have everyone aware of them. So yeah, I introduced myself. Van, if you would like to just say who you are.
Hello, I'm Van, designer by trade, and I do a lot of design still, visual and whatever. But these days, with DAOs, I mostly apply design to coordination problems and how we can design those for better experiences throughout the stack of all the things that we're doing. Most of my time is spent in DAO House, I guess, but I'm like Sky. I'm also in 63 DAOs total, and it's really great.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name's Simon. I go by Big Sky on Twitter. Hope everybody is ready for the best hour of ECC. It's happening right now. This is it. It is happening. And I hear there's going to be a dope after party after this. So hopefully we have a good hour. So I'm part of the core team at Index Co-op. Hopefully everybody is a DPI holder. If you do not hold DPI, it is an incredible product. And super stoked to see everybody here tonight.
And he's the energy on the stage, which is good. Thank you.
Nice energy. Hi everyone, my name is Juan. I'm the facilitator of one of the core units in MakerDAO, which is called Sustainable Ecosystem Scaling. And our mission is to scale the DAO by decentralizing work, capital, and workforce by different means. I think that covers it.
Pete, doesn't work.
Yeah, hold this close.
Just be very close. Pete, part of the Metacartel and the wider Meta ecosystem, mainly focused on metagame, which is like a metagame. Coordination. It's a massive coordination game. It's like a real-life MMORPG focused on onboarding people to the DAO space on Ethereum. That's it.
Sweet. So, this is decentralized governance. The point of the DAOist, and why does decentralization matter? In good scenarios, you don't need decentralization, but if you're in this space, you probably think that the characteristics of decentralization are important, and it makes things unstoppable, it makes things resilient, pretty transparent, and open. And so even though we can coordinate and we can build things in a less decentralized manner, if we're going to reach the goals that we eventually think we want, I think decentralization is important to always keep in mind. And so, at least at DXDAO, we build products in the DeFi space, but we always think about and focus on decentralization first. If we take this decision, does it create a central point of failure that could be either attacked by people or a government or something, and could it shut down the operations? And so a simple example is actually just a website, right? If you have a .com website that's owned by a company, the government could do something to shut that website down. And one way to make that website unstoppable is to use tools of Ethereum such as ENS. Shout out to Makoto, who's out there not listening. But yeah, so like DXDAO's products actually, so are the DApp is deployed by a community member onto IPFS, and then there's an actual proposal by the DAO on chain to point the ENS, which is omen.eth, let's say the Omen product, it points omen.eth, which is the ENS name owned by the DAO, to the actual IPFS, that hash. And that's how you do like decentralized governance of upgrading a product by DAO proposal. And so I know Juan has some like thoughts on this as well, because Maker, in my mind, Maker has been like pretty decentralized with a pretty decentralized community in the past, but it's going like to true decentralization. But there are points of centralization around like websites, and so in some scenarios there's legal entities that are set up to own like IP and things. And so we were talking about this, but if you could tell a little about like the path of how that's going and why it has to be kind of split up, that'd be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So before the foundation, the Maker Foundation, we actually had the pre-foundation where the very core team was building stuff, and then the foundation was created. It was a bit decentralized, and finally we are reaching the point, and this transition took several months. But we started first of all by actually making sure we had enough money within the DAO to fund all these what we call core units, which are just working groups that are serving the DAO. And we created the MIPS, which are making improvement proposals. And finally, we reached the state where people started either joining from the community, for example, my case, or some others making the jump from the Maker Foundation, stop being paid by the Maker Foundation, and being funded by the DAO. So that was the full circle that finished. I think it was 2 days ago when Rune Christensen actually posted in the blog of Maker saying we come full circle. This is it. We're closing the foundation finally.
Sweet.
Yeah, and I think that's so badass. I think that's a lesson for us all. I mean, obviously Maker's been here before any of us. The first ones, they were really pioneering all of this decentralization. And a really interesting thing that I've noticed on your guys' path is that as well as the technical decentralization of protecting domain names and repos and all these different things, you guys have maintained a sufficient focus on community decentralization as well, or the non-technical decentralization. And like earlier when you said when you were talking about central points of failure and the government can shut down our website or things like that. That's true. There are other points of centralized failure as well, though, which is if he's getting asked too many questions inside of the foundation, that's a central point of failure, and it's a coordination failure. And so anytime that any of us are gaining too much power and information that people don't have, we're only creating more barriers in our non-technical decentralization, I think.
One of the exercises we're actually doing is mapping all the risks that we can find in different aspects, legal, technical, governance. So how could the DAO fail? Then try to prioritize them, use any risk mechanisms that are quite widespread, and try to tackle them by assigning resources, being people or funds to tackle those problems. So I don't think we're done. We're far from done, but we're working towards it.
Just quick. Another thing was, the other point you said was, so people were getting paid by the foundation, and now they're getting paid by the DAO, and that was intentional. That was your plan. That was the roadmap. And then eventually, the goal is for the foundation to dissolve, right? And for the DAO to replace the foundation. And that's a lesson for us all to learn. That's how to do it. Make ourselves obsolete. When we need centralization for a moment, great, we need it. But build processes to enable the community to replace that, right? Yeah.
So that raises a good question. There was someone in the DAOist Telegram in the last couple of weeks that basically had an argument that like truly decentralized collectives can't have a very difficult time shipping product. And so that's actually a good question. Obviously, smart, tight, well-funded teams are shipping lots of products in our space, but there haven't been like tons of examples of ground up, like from decentralized start, like shipping product. And if you want to accomplish that, does it, like if it's very, very flat and truly like everything is just this one on-chain proposal, is that super inefficient and can't ship product? And so what is the answer to that? And what I think I've seen and is happening is you have to basically, while keeping decentralization, you basically have to fractalize, and there's projects that are forming squads or teams or allocating money specifically to a group of people that have a focus to build a specific thing for the DAO. So though that team might not be like the flat overarching DAO, it is part of the DAO community, right? And so Index Co-op, I feel like, was a decentralized community like from the start, I think. But I have heard a lot that there's like these core leaders and pushers within the community. And I'm interested if like how shipping or getting deals done within like that ecosystem has happened. If it takes some like team focused underneath this DAO, or if it's like can be done as like a flat DAO. Is that a?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think what we've done at Index Co-op that we've been really happy with over the last really 9 months is we've placed a real focus on really building a culture based on leadership, based on ownership, based on these really fundamental core values that are agreed upon across the community and are acted on by the community. And like when I say core values, I mean ownership, trust, integrity, and continually coming back to these values and really having community members who embrace those values, they exemplify those values, and are empowered to drive those values forward. We have a culture of leadership, we have a culture of ownership, and decentralized does not mean leaderless, right? It does not mean just everybody just kind of doing their own thing. Decentralized needs better leaders. It needs more leaders than what you have in a traditional organization. You can't rely on just one person to take charge and do everything. You need people across the protocol who are capable of building enough context, right? Like context is very important across the board. Like if you don't have context, you can't lead. But once you have people with the context, once you have people who understand the protocol, you have a culture where leaders can step up, they can take charge, they can build trust, and they can execute for the protocol.
Sweet. Pete, metagame is from the ground up, right? Are there leaders in the metagame that like just naturally like start to push initiatives and things, or is it really like an ant colony?
No, there really are leaders. Like in the beginning, I expected maybe expected everybody to be leader in a way, to like just find things to do and just do them. But it turns out that you really do need leaders, like people who will push it forward and like create path for like other people to get involved and like, yeah. So far, yeah, we have like 14, 15 leaders, so like in charge of each project inside metagame or inside like each department, which like specific skill based. We are still don't have like a process for removing leaders, but the idea is that like every champion can be challenged. Like so far we haven't had the need for that to happen, but the idea is like, yeah, they rise up naturally because the positions are open. Like people create a position for themselves, but like if you're a champion of the Schiller's Guild, and like somebody thinks that they can do a better job, that there should be a way for them to challenge it.
And I think a really important point that we miss is like these are very, very complicated systems that we are operating, right? Like these are the most complicated forms of human organization that have ever existed. It takes time for people to build the context, build the understanding, and feel comfortable leading these kind of organizations. And you need to invest in the people who are going to lead. Like, nobody is going to be able to show up to these protocols on day one and change the world, right? It takes months and months of investing in people. And like, I think that's a great thing that Peter and 1KX have done, is they understand that it is an investment over a long period of time. And the people, like, as we develop the community members, like, you are investing in the future of the protocol, you are investing in the leaders that will run this over the next decade, and it doesn't happen overnight. And I think DAOs in general need to get away from this mentality where we just expect people to show up and be able to do everything on day one. It's too complex, it's too big, the work is too hard.
I wanted to add that a leader is not necessarily an appointed person by the DAO, but it can be someone that just takes initiative and decides to own a project, has the agency to take it to the end, push it, and deliver whatever needs to be done. So it could be an intern even, without any power per se, but finally they decide to take on this attitude of doing and delivering, and that's eventually what lasts longer. And maybe you guys can talk about that too, but we've seen that these personalities that tend to be more can-do and they want to deliver things and do things and take initiatives tend to stick more than those that are asking what to do week after week. It's complicated.
I think that was a really good point. And we had there was like a workshop earlier where we just like kind of went through what's the main problem on layer 0, like on the human layer, no tech talk, just like what are the problems that we have. And that was the outcome of the workshop was, all these random community driven ideas were on the board. We organized them, worked through that together. But one thing that really stood out was when people enter these DAOs, there's a radical paradigm shift within, and it's very shocking. It's very complex. Everything is upside down, and yeah, like the work that you guys were doing with setting those values. These are the things that you will run into. This is how we've gotten through those as individuals and collectively. But don't be shocked. That's all happened to all of us. I think that's a really important thing that we can do better. Is how you guys are doing it. That's great.
Cool. I think we have 15 minutes left. The last 10 minutes, it would be good to get some questions or any discussion points that the crowd actually wants to either talk about, or raise, or ask. Great. Here.
Hey, so I'm quite new to the industry. Philip, hi. I was wondering, MakerDAO, you're starting working with development squads like Spotify does. I'm wondering, do you make sure to rotate these teams so that knowledge is decentralizing, and you make sure to document standards? Do you find standards for documentation, first of all? And second of all, do you aim to keep these teams work efficiently together, especially as they rotate? It's important to have standardized continuous deployment processes, for example, continuous integration processes. Have a standard in terms of how do we write code style, code guidelines, all of that. So is this something you are on already, or?
I'll give you a quick answer, and happy to talk after if you want. The short answer is no. These teams are not centrally managed. So they're just being paid by the DAO with a mandate, and it's up to them to work however they want. However, there is a lot of collaboration between different, what we call core units. For example, Risk, Oracles, and Protocol Engineer, which is the developers, work a lot to make sure that we can deliver the collateral assets. Regarding their own documentation practices, yes, we try to be as open as possible, share as much as possible in the forums. And yeah, we find that the more open you are, the more you're inviting other people to come help you. So maybe it's an initial investment that's larger, but...
Is that one follow-up question, if I may? But wouldn't it make sense to you can still be open, but basically for all languages and typical frameworks like React, like and TypeScript, like have certain standards given, and they can still be challenged by anyone, right? Like they can still be like code style guideline improvement proposals, so to say, right? But giving people a standard to apply to, and my best practices are for free, right? Like we are not coming up with something new here. I think they would greatly improve efficiency between decentralized teams and like solving the problem of having not enough output as being decentralized. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't think anyone is going to disagree with best standards or best practices. So the teams are super encouraged to follow standards, industry standards, especially because it's easier to recruit or get more people to join. My core unit personally, we are incubating other core units. So ideally, if we find a group of 3 talented developers that want to join MakerDAO, instead of telling them, hey, go work with the developers, what we try to do is create a different core unit to be more resilient, to work on parallel problems, and that way we think that we can optimize the output and the throughput. And I don't know what the magic number is, but right now, after 12 to 15 people within a core unit, it starts becoming messy. So that's what we're trying to achieve.
I think there's a really interesting thing that you're kind of asking, and it's really core to these questions that we're talking about with decentralization, is like, how do we build a sustainable framework that can exist over a long period of time when people are really working at will, right? Like anybody can leave at any time, anybody can show up, but it's like, how do we make a framework that like exists in perpetuity, just like continually, even though people are changing, teams are changing, and people like there's stuff that people don't want to do, right? Like there's hard aspects of running any kind of business that get even harder when it's a decentralized protocol, right? And like, how do we have a framework where all the nitty gritty, like all like the example I use is like cleaning the bathroom, right? Like, how do we make a framework where the bathroom in the DAO still gets cleaned? Like all the stuff that people don't want to do still happens. And like, that's really hard because, you know, we have people show up, right? And it's the DAO jungle gym. I can do whatever I want. It's totally decentralized. Like it's totally free. Here I am, like, let's party. And like, that's great when you're starting off and you're just like, we just need bodies and we need energy and we need movement. But eventually as a DAO, you have to move past that. And you have to establish frameworks where the work that people don't want to get done is getting done, and it's getting done every month, every quarter. And like, there's a lot of things for us that are really emerging as our business grows and scales that have to happen every month. We have to make certain payments. We have to do certain things. And it's not fun doing those. Like, I don't like paying our market maker every, like, the first of the month, but it has to happen. And, like, I don't think anybody has really honed in on how we build a culture of really high accountability where those things are happening consistently and they're happening, like, on a long, year-long time frame while you're still having this culture where people can show up, they can do work, they're happy, they like contribute in the way they want to contribute. And like, that is central, right? Like, these are problems that need to be solved. These are problems that need to be asked.
Yeah, just quick to add on to that. Yeah, the thing that worked on products for many, many years, and one of the things that is most needed to the users is documentation. It's the last thing that we build. Because of that, it's like nobody wants to write documentation, but it's the most important thing. And in DAOs, absolutely. Like I make a personal initiative when I do a new thing that the community has never done, but the community will need to do again. I just write down what I did, and I put it in the thing, and that's the first step. And if somebody changes the process, then they need to update it. But so many times we just don't even do that, And we're iterating and evolving so fast that documentation, how do I contribute? It's a boring word. We'll probably come up with a better word. Communities will come up with a better word. But this is like how to contribute in this community, and they're all going to be different. We might find some standards that are commonalities for absolutely, but, like you were saying, there are a lot of teams that do have different ways of working, and, there will be commonalities and common schemas that we can plug into each other, and it makes that process easier, I think. But yeah, documentation is key, like day zero, not like, oh, let's write documentation next week. It's like, oh, I did the thing, I better write it down and post it, kind of thing, Yeah.
And it comes back to like what we're talking about this over and over again. It comes back to leadership, right? Leadership in the DAO. Do you have the strong enough leaders that can enforce these best practices that are consistently like on it, come rain or shine, bull market, bear market, every single week, every single day? Are we documenting? Are we following up? Are we putting this down? Are we following best practices? And like, if you don't have the leadership in the DAO, people are just going to do whatever, and it's going to devolve into, subgroups and people against people. Like, you need that strong core of leadership. You need those strong values that continually hammer, like, we are documenting. We are putting these things in the share drive. We are doing this. We are doing that every single week.
Do you think these leaders, because those leaders in a company are the founders with like most of the equity in the company, so the most upside for making sure shit gets done and assigning it and paying people to do it? The DAO, there's no CEO of a DAO, right? So the DAO is the CEO, so the DAO has to do this. But should there be some people in the community that have more upside that then they're incentivized to make sure that shit gets done?
That's the $1,000,000 question, right? Like incentives and how you manage that. I think that it's very early, very experimental. We're researching a lot about delegation, voting. There's 1,000 ways of voting and managing cash flows, because at the end of the day, you need to follow the money, and that's what the incentives are for. And if you want something done and you throw money at it, it probably will get done. So it's also a matter of how you manage that in order to grow in a good way without ruining everything and burning apart.
Well, I mean, it comes to like ownership, right? Like, that is the moment, that is like the fundamental moment in a DAO, is when someone sees the token they hold and they have a light bulb moment and they say, I can make this token into anything I want to make it if I work hard on it, if I invest in it. Like, what I put into this is what I get out of it, right? And you said like the founders, right? The protocol the founders, right? So in a traditional company, it's like, hey, these are the three people that have all this ownership, and they're the ones, like, what they put into it is what they get out of it, essentially. And everybody else is just getting paid a salary. DAOs are they're flipping that paradigm, and people are scared of it. They are scared of like the responsibility that comes with that ownership. But what like I think everybody on the stage and everybody in this audience is focused on is, how do we take this and create these structures where 10, 20, 100 people feel like, I have complete ownership of this, and I am going to make this into, I can make this into whatever, as great of a thing as I want to make it through my like sheer equity and effort I'm putting into it.
Questions? No.
Okay, great talk, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Just like last 5 minutes, for everyone, since we're like talking about this, what are some of the challenges each of you face in your respective DAOs that you could address? Maybe we could start with Pete and then go down, even you, Sky.
More builders. We just fixed the onboarding system, which was fixing what he was talking about, like documentation, because like previously there was nothing. And like in the beginning, I was, as I said previously also, like I was hoping that people just pick things up, but like you need leaders, you need somebody in charge, you need people running calls that are like regular, you need people onboarding other people, you need the documentation. So like that whole process needs to be in place, because like people will just come in and they will go. And then now it's just about getting more builders.
I think for Maker right now is scale without breaking everything. We are probably reaching the Dunbar number relatively soon. We're already a bunch of people. It's hard to keep up with everything, even for people within Maker. So I cannot imagine for some voter, MKR holder, that's just doing this with less time. So there's all these things that we need to prioritize. By the way, if anyone is looking to contribute to Maker, come talk with me and we can probably figure something out.
Lighter. So, the biggest problem I think all decentralized protocols face, and we certainly face, is fear, right? Like, decentralization is scary. And people, as decentralization grows in scale, it gets scarier and scarier and scarier. Like, people are not, they are not ready to fully embrace the implications of decentralization and how fast these systems move, how fast they evolve, how fast they change. And that sheer scale creates a tremendous amount of fear for people. Everybody in this room, none of us grew up with decentralized systems. All of us grew up in corporations, in colleges, high schools that were very centralized. And these are completely decentralized organizations that are very different than anything any of us have experienced up to this point. So the big problem that decentralized protocols face is, as they become progressively more decentralized, people get progressively more scared, right? There are multiple periods where people are very, it is scary giving up the true control, and people want to hoard the control and say, hey, I'm in charge of this because that is safe to me and I understand it and it makes me feel comfortable. But what is required for these protocols to grow is that embracing decentralization, is understanding that this system will work, that this system will really triumph over the long term, and we can make this happen, and it is happening right now.
You had me thinking. Yeah. Sorry.
Echoing on that in fear, but so decentralized. So if you try to do this whole thing in a quite decentralized way, you often do it slower. It's harder, it's scarier. And so what I've seen is you're competing against small, little, well-funded companies that are building protocols. And so if you are competing against other entities, it's hard. It's hard because if you are trying to do it in the decentralized way and you're competing against this small, really CEO-led team, they can move a lot faster. And so in the long run, if we figure this out, I think the community-owned, broader, eventually more efficient ecosystem could win, and it's definitely more resilient, and it's unstoppable, but it's harder, so you do lose. At this point it becomes harder to compete against the smaller, more nimble guys.
Now I feel like I have to go between both of you because that was connected. Yeah, that's very true. So that's interesting. So the competition between for sure a decentralized community organization, whatever you want to call it, will not move as fast as a centralized group of 5 people. Clearly, in the short term. But the long-term value of those two things that are being created goes back to what you said, which is ownership, which is key. That thing created by 5 centralized people, they have accumulated all the power. The power is there, and it is very, very difficult to program incentives to incentivize people to give up power. Therefore, I would argue that it's better to avoid. If anybody ever can give anybody power, that's already a coordination failure, because a truly decentralized product, I think, will outperform any centralized product in the long tail, because anybody who comes, when there is optionality between using these things that grant me maybe a tiny sliver of ownership just as a token of whatever, or this thing that's truly decentralized where I can contribute and gain a significant upside if I come in and add value to the thing. I like the thing, here's the thing that'll make it better. There is a path for me to gain ownership. If something's centralized, there is no path to that. I don't think that the sure, in the short term there would be competition, but I think in the long term, a decentralized product where the consumers and the users of that product can own it and affect it. Most importantly, thank you, Peter Pan. I think I need to do a shout out to an article that you wrote the other day that was really enlightened me on a side of DAOs that I think really came up today too. That I think you hit on a lot, or all of us hit on a lot today, is that the centralized communities allow every single person in that thing, whether you're just a user who uses it one time or you're someone who's like a core contributor, everyone can affect the thing, even if it's a tiny bit. If there's not a path to ownership, then there is no path to affecting that thing. And that's a wildly different world where like there's not just a few people affecting the thing that we interact with, but instead it's affected by all of us. And that's a very, very colorful world that I hadn't even visualized until there was it was just a sentence in one of your things. It wasn't even like a conclusive statement. It just really inspired me to with these technologies, with sharing true ownership along all these different social groups. I think DAOs will just be every social group of humans will be a decentralized form of that because it will compete any centralized form of that. Why would anybody join a centralized group when you can join a decentralized group where you can actually affect it and gain ownership and so on and so forth? But I guess the original question was, what's the biggest challenge? But I was just inspired, so thanks. Yeah.
Well, I think we are done with time, right? Or do we want to keep talking? There's another panel after this, and people also want to go to the bar.
I have one quick last note. So I think it's important to remember, this is something that's never been done before. It is very, very scary. It is very, very, very new. But this is the future. This is how people will organize themselves going forward. And this is the first awkward steps, and we're all taking those steps together, and it is scary and it is hard. And there are points where everybody is uncomfortable and we're not sure what the next step is or where we're going after this. But I think the core to this is we have to have the faith that we're going somewhere awesome. It is painful. We're all going somewhere awesome. And this is a better future that we are stepping into that does not exist without these forms of organization. And it is happening right now. It is happening today. The people up here are they're doing it every single day. And, every day more and more people are walking away from these old structures that are broken and don't work and joining something new to build something incredible. And it is happening right now.
And I think we should all give Maker a huge round of applause for inspiring us all. Letting us know that any of it was ever possible, and really leading us along the way. And thanks.
Thanks for everyone for coming. Yeah.